There are a little over 500,000 words in the Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. There are over 500,000 scientific nomenclatures and technical terms. You know about 6% of the former 500,000 and know about 1% of the other 500,000. America's literacy rate has tremendously decreased over the last 50 years. Your vocabulary has dropped by 20%. There are over 1 million words in the English language, and you know about 40,000. The reason for this is because schools have failed to teach reading and writing, have failed to teach arts and humanities. Over the last 10 years, standardized testing has been pushed forward. Schools have thought that the industrial movement of the 21st century was still around, and that students should be learning math and science. So funding for reading, writing, and the arts and humanities has been cut. I have a story, actually. I was speaking to an arts major who's working on her master's, actually. And sadly, she didn't even know what the word implicit meant, but she was in the arts and humanities. So that's just a sad story, because what does that mean for people who are in majors such as engineering or math if an arts major didn't even know the meaning of a word? Pretty much, vocabulary, a failed vocabulary, is the result of failed reading and writing. I'm here to talk because I believe that schools need to implement more reading and writing, not necessarily drop the science and math that's already in place, because science and math is important, but reading and writing over the years has shown an increase in test scores. So if schools want test scores to improve, they need students to be reading and writing more. 80% of all high school students do not read something of interest daily. 60% of all high school students don't read anything at all. This has dramatically decreased again. In the 1980s, high school students, the amount of high school students who didn't read at all were 40%, and those who didn't read daily were 60%. This is extremely sad because as college students, about 80% of you are not reading daily. But when you look at 9-year-olds, the reciprocal is true. They read, about 80% of them read daily. And this is a remarkable shift, because as educated students, you think that you would be reading, but you're not. And this could be a result of personal motivation, but also I believe is a result of schools not teaching you the importance of reading and writing, the importance of the arts and humanities. The education system that's been created can't even live up to its own standardized tests that it's been creating. Reading and writing scores have dropped dramatically. I think in certain states, the reading and writing scores have dropped by 10% in reading and writing alone, while math and science is also dropping. But math and science are not helping the reading and writing scores at all. But the reading and writing scores can help the math and science scores. If we look at this, this is over the course of 20 years, about rating 17-year-olds in testing. And those who read for fun daily scored almost, in some cases, almost 3 times as much as those who didn't read at all on tests. Out of a test of 500, students would score 302 compared to people who would only score 274. And out of a test of 300, people would score about 165 compared to those who wouldn't even score a 50%, which is an F, below an F. But even with these results, even showing that reading and writing daily reading, writing, exercises daily do improve test scores, schools aren't listening, faculty isn't listening. They still believe that math and science is the way to go, and that they still believe that this industrial world still exists, but it's shifting and changing. 50 years ago, people thought that it would be a good idea to have schools set up in ways that were lectured, that where they believe that students receive information through lecturing, but that is not the case. And studies show that there are many different types of learners: kinesthetic, oral, reading, verbal learners, but yet schools aren't appealing to this. But what does appeal to this is the arts and humanities. The reading and writing exercises do appeal to different learning types. But yet funding has been cut dramatically to arts and humanities. In some states, it's almost 50% of the funding for arts and humanities has been cut. And again, this is extremely sad because arts and humanities has shown that it's beneficial. Music does improve intelligence. People who listen to Mozart do improve test scores. Reading and writing are often cited ways to improve the IQ of people, but yet people don't partake in that. Another story that I heard once from a Harvard graduate who got his PhD in chemistry. He was sitting amongst a bunch of his chemistry colleagues, and he asked them what the philosophy of science was. None of them could give him an answer. None of them even knew what that statement meant. People may know the what, but they don't know the why. And the solution to that is more arts and humanities classes. Some majors on campus are only required to even take 6 credits of arts and humanities. I believe this amount should be increased for all students, not even arts and humanities majors, but those in engineering, those in mathematics, because it is beneficial. But on a basic primary school level, basic education level, I think schools should implement reading and writing programs. My high school actually implemented a reading SSR, sound and reading time every day for 35 minutes. And when they first implemented this, they saw an increase in test scores for the standardized tests, the WASL, Washington Assessment Test for Student Learning. But again, this will be difficult for you to achieve. Talking to people at high schools, at middle schools, at elementary schools doesn't really help you because they won't listen. But what I suggest that you do is, for yourselves, read more. Treat reading as a fun exercise. Read things that you enjoy, but also convince others to read. Convince others to write daily. It's an exercise that improves personality. It's an exercise that